Eritrean Defense Forces committed war crimes and possible crimes against humanity in Tigray, Amnesty International alleges. By Catherine Nichols, CNN. The Eritrean Defense Forces committed war crimes and possibly crimes against humanity in Tigray, Ethiopia, immediately before and after signing a ceasefire last year. A new Amnesty International report has alleged the crimes are said to have happened between October of 2022 and January this year, during an ongoing conflict between Tigrayan forces and the federal Ethiopian government and its allies, including the Eritrean Defense Forces, EDF, which has left thousands dead since it began in 2020. The 46-page report details abuses such as the rape and sexual enslavement of women, who it says were subjected to physical and psychological abuse and deprivation of food, water, and medical services, as well as the extrajudicial execution of civilians during house-to-house searches. Tigray is one of 11 administrative regions in Ethiopia, Africa's second most populous country. Each region is mostly autonomous, with its own police force and militia. Regional governments are largely divided along entrenched ethnic lines, and long-standing tensions between regions have led to ethno-nationalist clashes. Amnesty's new findings focus on the Kokab-Tsiba and Mariam Shayutau districts, which remained under the EDF's control until January 19, 2023. CNN reached out to the Ethiopian National Defense Force, Eritrean Information Ministry and Ethiopian Foreign Ministry for comment on Amnesty's findings but did not receive a response at the time of writing. A 2021 CNN investigation uncovered evidence of the torture, mass detention and execution of residents in the town of Humera in the Tigray region. Bodies were found bound with electrical wire, some missing limbs or showing signs of suffering intense violence. Eyewitnesses and forensic experts described victims being tortured, executed, and piled on top of each other. The Ethiopian government responded to CNN's findings via an American public relations firm saying they would be working with the relevant authorities to investigate and hold those that they find responsible to account. Within the Amnesty report released on Tuesday, a social worker says that a total of 160 sexual violence cases were reported in Kokab-Tsiba between November 2020 and January 2023. A medical expert cited in the report says their center has handled 2,250 cases of conflict-related sexual violence from parts of the eastern Tigray zone, including Kokab-Tsiba. In the same period, some women were raped inside an Eritrean military camp while others were attacked and kept prisoner in their own homes. Victims said that they could identify the perpetrators through their uniforms, the Tigrayan dialect, and the use of racial slurs. According to Amnesty International, survivors said that EDF soldiers frequently asked them, "Weren't you chanting that Tigray will win?" The report suggests that women were held on suspicion that their spouses, sons, or relatives were in the Tigrayan forces. Amnesty International's report also found evidence of the killings of 23 men and 1 woman in Kokab-Tsiba district between November 2022 and January 2023. Many of these executions were reported to be at close range. The victims are reported to have been aged between 40 and 90 years old. One victim, a 70-year-old priest, was allegedly shot and killed while seeking refuge inside a church. Due to the violence taking place in the district, many victims' families described being unable to bury their loved ones for long periods of time after their deaths. One woman told Amnesty International that her husband's body remained at the place where he was killed for 3 months. Extrajudicial executions are also reported to have taken place in Mariam Shayutau district. Amnesty International cites a social worker who, it says, provided a list of more than 100 names of people who they said had been extrajudicially executed within this period. Witnesses and family members of the victims declared that victims were civilians, most actually farmers, the report said. Communities in Kokab-Tsiba and Mariam Shayutau have had their lives changed, irreversibly, by the violations they experienced at the hands of the EDF, Amnesty International said. Survivor is quoted in the report as saying, "Humans were treated like animals throughout this conflict. Our sons should not die because of a war as well. Let this be the last war," they continued. Eritrea and Ethiopia have an obligation to effectively investigate and, where there is sufficient evidence, prosecute crimes under international law, including alleged war crimes and crimes against humanity. This must be done in line with international standards on the right to a fair trial and without resort to the death penalty. Amnesty is calling for the mandate of the International Commission of Human Rights Experts on Ethiopia, ICRE, to be renewed during the upcoming UN Human Rights Council's 54th session starting on 11th of September, Ethiopia's New Year's Day. Amnesty is also calling on the African Commission on Human and People's Rights to rescind its decision to terminate the mandate of the Commission of Inquiry on the situation in the Tigray region of the Federal Republic of Ethiopia established in May 2021. In June this year, the mandate was terminated before the Commission of Inquiry had produced a final report.
Police in Tel Aviv had been warned that there might be violence, but they were taken by surprise. Hundreds of Eritrean asylum seekers marched on the Eritrean embassy in Tel Aviv to protest against the dictatorship back home. When police tried to prevent them from reaching there, it turned violent. More than 150 people were injured, including 30 police officers. Israeli police fired tear gas, rubber bullets and stun grenades. Live rounds were also fired in the air, but a number of victims were reportedly treated in hospital with gunshot wounds.
To my sorrow, since the morning, the two sides did not keep their commitments and did stand by the license to protest given to them. They arrived here since the early morning with the intention to sabotage the event. We were deployed with reinforcements since this morning and also overnight, because we had information they planned to burn down the club.
Mid-afternoon, and the clashes started again between Eritrean opposition and pro-government supporters. Cars were smashed and they broke shop windows. Police told Tel Aviv residents to stay indoors.
The people that support the Eritrean, the dictator, they come and they scare them. They come and they fight with them on the street. This is not a fight against an idea or against the system. This is a fight for their lives.
By late afternoon, the situation was under control and many of the protesters were arrested. Similar protests have taken place across the world recently. Hospitals in Tel Aviv declared mass emergency situations, and one said that they hadn't seen a single incident like this since the Second Palestinian Intifada 20 years ago. Alistair Bunkle, Sky News in Israel.